Hi everyone, welcome to our first project of the fall, winter, spring season. And this one, as you can see, is a Geo Metro. Now, what inspired this project? Well, my regular daily driver beater finally had a catastrophic failure, and frankly it wasn't worth putting any more money in, so it's gone off to the great auto recycler in the sky. And I've had this car sitting around for about 5 years. It was my daughter's. We redid it a bunch of years ago, put a high performance engine in it, lowered it, did a ton of work, and just before she went to Scotland to do her master's degree, she dropped it off because it wasn't running quite right. And when I got into it, it wasn't running quite right because the engine was wrecked. So it kind of got ignored, but have to stop ignoring it now. And I need a daily driver. These little monsters get around 50 miles to the gallon. I've had a couple of them over the years. They're fun little cars to drive. They get exceptional gas mileage. And what's really important for me in this part of the world is they're warm at minus 30. No, they won't chase you out of the car, but they're more than tolerable. And I'm willing to trade a little bit of heat for excellent gas mileage. But it's going to be a fairly substantial project. So let's look at what it's going to take to turn this into a car again. So the first thing we have to look at is under the hood. Now, when I say wreck the engine, I wasn't kidding. Inside, what's left of this damaged block is a balanced crankshaft, polished, shot peened, and balanced rods. The crankshaft as well has been hardened. It's got chamfered oil holes to increase flow. It had custom pistons and a ton of other expensive work. I originally built it to put into an ultralight airplane, so I went way over what is required for a car for the reliability. But if you look close, right in here, while she had the car, she swallowed something, and I have no idea what. But it came into this cylinder, and right in here there is a gouge down the side of the block that is impossible to fix. It's done, so the block is toast. And we'll be pulling this engine out. It's only got about 20,000 miles on it, or around 30,000 kilometers. Everything on it was fresh and new, and we'll be setting it aside for a future project. In the meantime, we have another engine ready to go. It is a bone stone cold stalker. As a matter of fact, I built it one weekend a little while ago out of used parts I had lying around, so it's not even a true rebuild. It's just been taken apart and made sure everything's within factory specs. It's got about 80,000 miles on it. Seems to be in really good condition. Put it back together with a new head gasket and some other bits, and it'll be what it'll be, and if we have problems we'll deal with them as we go. So that's number one on the hit parade. Now, because it's been sitting so long, once we get the engine in, I'm fully expecting other problems in the fuel system, in the ignition system, because it's been sitting so long. But we'll work through those one at a time. Next on the list is going to be suspension, tires, and brakes. When we built this car, we lowered it about 2 inches, and you can tell by the tire gap there's not a lot there. But the way we did the front springs didn't work out well. On a really big bump where you get a lot of wheel droop, they can come off their seats. So that's something that has to be solved. And again, because the car has been sitting so long, we have to go through the brake system and make sure it's in good shape. We know how we're going to get the go. Now we got to make sure we got the stop. Tires are oversized. They're very wide for the car. This car only weighs 1,800 pounds. And again, I'll be driving this car mostly in the winter, so we need a narrower tire with better grip. I happen to have a set, so they'll be going on, and that'll give us the traction we need for the winter season. Now, when you walk around the little car quickly, she looks pretty darn solid and appears to be in pretty good shape. but it's a little deceiving. The convertibles have a couple of areas that are prone to rust, that are structural, and over the years this one has gotten them both. And when we get down here, here's the problem child. The rockers have got a lot of rust in here. It's got to be dealt with. It is a structural issue, so we're going to have to be cutting that out and replacing it. And then there's some cosmetic stuff that just needs to be touched up and repaired. But that's pretty major repair. And again, we're doing this all on a super tight budget. I jokingly call it my COVID budget because I spent a lot of time out of work this year. This car has got to go together on what I have in the shop for the most part. The top is in good shape, except for somebody tried breaking into it and caused some damage. So we'll need to address that as well. As you can see, a little more of the superficial stuff. And again, on this side, structural that we have to deal with, no choice. The interior is really good. It essentially needs nothing. Windshield's good. So it's a decent base. But again, this is a super low buck project. We're going to try and buy nothing if we can help it, and just use what we have here off the shelf and the tools and equipment here. The goal is to wind up with a nice stock little car that will be lowered about 2 inches because that's the way it's set up. The shocks were all new just before when we originally put the car together, so they've only got about 20,000 K on them, same with the suspension, the clutch and everything else. So we shouldn't need to buy a lot. I'm sure hoping not. And we'll be going step by step through the process. So let's take a look at some of the bits and pieces we're going to be using. So this will be the engine that's going in. Again, it's bone stock, it's built out of used parts except for a head and a pan gasket. And we've checked through it, we've measured the ring gaps, we've measured the bearing clearances, everything's on target. The head has not been redone, so if I'm going to have problems, that's where I'm anticipating they're going to be. I built it in a weekend where the weather was absolutely miserable and I couldn't do anything else. So I'm hoping she's going to be as sweet as I think she's going to be. It was a good running engine. It's actually the engine that came out of the car originally in order to put in the high performance engine. It's been cleaned, it's been detailed, it's been checked through, and cost me virtually nothing except a can of paint because I had all the parts on the shelf. Wasn't anticipating making this the first project of the year, but there wasn't a lot of choice. So we have the parts off the car that came out of the trunk. Some of them are all ready to go back on. And notice, this is the standard we're looking for. Everything is going to be cleaned and detailed and checked through to make sure that it's good and it looks good. There's no point in building a car, having it filthy, dirty, and looking like you threw it together out of a bunch of stuff from the ditch. So we're going to make this as clean and detailed as possible. Some of the other parts that came out. Now what's kind of aggravating is the amount of time that was spent on this cylinder head when it was built. The head only has 20 K on it. One valve took a really strong hit from whatever went through the engine. But if you look real close, you'll notice it's been all port matched and polished. The head was, of course, surfaced when it was done. Here's another good example. All very carefully done when it was put together. It's unfortunate it got damaged. We'll be saving these parts because getting it back on the road is only the first stage of this project. The intent is we're going to get it stock except for being lowered. We're going to get it to be a good daily driver, my winter piece, and over the next year or so we're going to be upgrading a lot of the parts because we have them. So it's a low buck project that we're looking forward to doing. But everything is going to get the death cleaned out of it and detailed up so that we have a good looking little machine when it's all done. So on our project board, first and foremost is the engine and the engine systems, closely followed by suspension, tires, and brakes. Then we're going to deal with the body structure, then we're going to deal with the cosmetics. And that work's going to start now. We're going to pull out the jack and the jack stands, and we have our manual ready to back us up. I've built a number of these cars, but I always keep the manual handy. And because it's a convertible, and because of where the rust is, once we jack this thing up, the doors aren't going to open again. Convertible structure is very reliant on the rocker section. We don't really know how bad that is. So for the moment, once she's in the air, the doors don't get opened. So we're about to let the games begin, and that starts with getting the old engine out. And in this case, we're going to be taking it out of the bottom, and you'll get to see that in our next section here on Real Builds. Welcome back to our low-budget Geo Metro program. As you can see, we now have her jacked up in the air and the hood propped all the way back so it's out of our way. And if you were to crawl underneath, you would see how we've located the jack stands very, very securely on the lower control arm mounts so it can't go anywhere. At the back, wheels are all blocked. We make safety first an important piece. So the next step is getting the front wheels and tires off, and we're about to dive into that. Okay, and we get our first surprise. We got the wheels off, she's up in the air. Notice how I put the lug nuts straight back on so I didn't lose them. But challenges, challenges. See here how the brakes have all rusted up from sitting. So we've got to figure out a solution for that, and it's the same on both sides. The calipers also have to be cleaned up, and we're going to have to inspect this really thoroughly. Fortunately, I think I have the solution here, but we'll find out pretty quick. Okay, where are we at the end of the first work session? Well, the top of the motor was pretty well disconnected already because we had torn the head off to find out what was wrong with it a few years ago. We've managed to pull the axles, pull the brakes, get the struts out of the way. That's all clear. We've drained the transaxle, lowered the exhaust. Gonna have to lower it some more though. And done the same on this side. So pretty much all that's left now is to get the exhaust out of the way and undo the shifter and the torque rod. And then we've got a few mounts, not much. You know, we're looking at 10 bolts, and she'll be coming out of the way. But today is Thanksgiving, and as I choose to live so I can continue the project, I'm going to head in early for dinner, and we'll catch you guys next time. Thanks again. If you like what we're doing, click the like, the subscribe, and the notify. Appreciate it. It's what keeps us going around here, and we'll talk to you soon.